Welcome to Drinks Coach. Another one. It's Thursday. Fine sack for me. Drinks Coach UK, all lowercase for anything to do with this hoo-ha, whatever you want to call it. I recorded a podcast with the lovely and highly erudite and well-researched Rhône wine expert Matt Walls this morning. And I thought it would seem foolish not to share some of the wine that I tasted with him with you, and to tell you about a subject. Obviously, I haven't done a podcast. They paid me to do that podcast. I'm not going to lie that didn't happen. But I just thought these wines are so special, it'd be quite nice to give you guys a chance to understand what the fuss is all about. So, what we've got here, we've got 4 different wines here from a region which is, I suppose, after Bordeaux, probably second in terms of average consumers' popularity and knowledge of wine. I say that because Burgundy, which is always considered the first or second, along with Bordeaux, prestigious wine region in France, the good stuff, you can't afford it. And actually, the difference is that in Bordeaux and in the Rhône, more specifically, you can afford the good stuff. The good stuff starts way down. Where with Burgundy, you're kind of pushing 20 quid before you find a little bit of the magic that everyone's looking at. And the wines go all the way up to, and I'm not joking, over 10 grand a bottle. I haven't tried one of those. I'm not sure I want to. It's irrelevant to Man on Beast. So unless you're going to collect it and sell it to someone else without drinking it, I don't see the point, frankly. So we've got wine here from the Côtes du Rhône. So you've got the southern bit of France, you've got the whole chunk along the bottom. When you get to the bottom right-hand corner, just before the Provence, and then you do a dogleg north, you've got a long strip of land, which is largely split in half by a mountain range at the top of the bottom half. So imagine this is the Rhône, okay? Top bit of the Rhône, the northern Rhône, up en Puy, that sort of area. Syrah is king, and it's a very different set of circumstances and microclimates and soil types to the ridge of mountains below the administrative centre, if you like, of Rome, which is called Montélimar. Then you have this ridge of mountains which cuts it right off, and then you've got this delta of rivers from the Rhône going through. You get a triangle of alluvial land that goes out into the Mediterranean, and this bit, which is largely flat, actually, if you look at Côtes du Rhône in general, at the bottom, and full of what they call galets pebbles, like pudding stones, I think is the English description of it. Huge, great, very smooth, big pudding stones, large pebbles. If you were going to draw a cartoon pebble, that's what a galet pebble looks like. And these are things that have rolled down the Alps after many years through glacial action, and they've created this covering in the Southern Rhône of these big pudding stone, hard, heavy, very dense rock pebbles, which has a magical effect on what happens next. Because below, in most of Côtes du Rhône, certainly on the flat alluvial plateau, you have soils which we call marl limestone soils. So it's a mixture of limestone, but marl has a huge amount of clay in it as well. They're much older soils, they're much more ancient. They've been ground down to a putty, just literally like moldable clay. Absolute bugger to grow wine in. And actually, if you're actually on marl or clay soils working, your boots become like Elton John, like platform shoes in like Pinball Wizard. They just get heavier and heavier as more and more clay sticks to your feet. Horrible. So you've got these pudding stones, these huge rocks, on top of what is largely a lot of clay. Now, there are better bits of soil the further up the hill you go. Of course, at the top of a mountain or top of a hill, you're going to have very different soil structures to the ones that have been washed down to the bottom. Because of that, there's an awful lot of diversity and interest and range in the wines in this one single region. And that's what makes it exciting for most people that get fascinated by wine. Also, Matt Walls, who lived for 2 years in one of those crews, one of the villages, one of the named villages of Côtes du Rhône, he's researched the whole thing for 2 years. He's coming out with a book. If Matt Walls writes a book, he writes beautifully, and he's also an intellect, and he can turn the wine geek on like the best man, including me. And he's going to bring out a wonderful book. So just look up Matt Walls. I'm very sorry, Matt, I've forgotten the name of the book, but just put Matt Walls into Amazon, and I think you'll probably already see what the name of the book is, but it's going to be a definitive work on the wines of what we're talking about right now. So at the bottom, in the Camargue Delta, you've got a lot of cereals grown, but just above that, where the wines start to be grown, you've got a lot of Côtes du Rhône. Now, Côtes du Rhône is made from various grape varieties. I suppose the easiest way to describe the whole region of Côtes du Rhône is thus. Number one, it's giant. It's giant. It's about half the size of Bordeaux, which in of itself makes more wine than the whole of South Africa. When we're talking French wine regions, Italian wine regions, it dwarfs the New World. Until I left wine buying in supermarkets, which was back in the early 2000s, the south of France was still making more wine than New Zealand, Australia and South Africa put together. It gives you some sort of perspective. But so, what's the whole point about this? So you've got Côtes du Rhône, which is a big region which captures the whole area. And then there was a place that was famous about wine, is famous about wine, is hugely revered and collected, that makes giant, gigantesque is the French word, alcoholic beasts of a wine, called Chateauneuf du Pape. Yeah, some of you have heard that, haven't you? Chateauneuf du Pape, famous name. Chateauneuf du Pape literally means the Pope's new castle. Chateauneuf means Newcastle. It does. And the popes occupied the south of France for a long period of time. That was the papal seat of the Holy Roman Empire, was in the south of France, in Avignon. And that Châteauneuf du Pape region is now still famous for making wine. But as wines get more collectible and more countries around the world start to appreciate it, Châteauneuf du Pape becomes more and more expensive. And now if you're buying cooperative Châteauneuf du Pape from an ordinary carved cooperative of growers who don't really care much, you're still way above £15. You're probably looking at £25 for a cooperative that cares. And when you start looking at growers of Châteauneuf du Pape, you're looking at £30, £40, £70, single, small estate, 150, it goes crazy. So these are the super wines of the Southern Rhône. Grape varieties. Châteauneuf du Pape's allowed to be made from 13 grape varieties. Some producers still produce Châteauneuf du Pape from all 13. Some of them are actually white, and there's a limit in terms of the exact mix, what percentage of the wine, the resultant wine, can be made from white. Obviously, they don't want to make the wines too pale. But there are varieties like Bourboulenc, Clairette, Picpoul, varieties which are known white varieties which have character in their own right, but they add extra, instruments to the orchestra, if you like. And Châteauneuf du Pape is nothing if not orchestral as a wine. They can be 16.5% alcohol, well, they don't often put it on the label. They're beasts, but they're Gershwins of wines, okay? Now, you've got that in the middle, serious money. You've got Côtes du Rhône around, which even now, if you go to Côtes du Rhône, the average price for a glass of Côtes du Rhône bought from a co-op or from in bulk is still way below €2 or €3. We're talking a couple of quid here. But there's something in between. And the in-between is a real insider's tip. If you love big red wines, listen to the next 10 minutes, because these wines are rather special. Châteauneuf du Pape, you've got a town called Orange, right? And then up on the left-hand coast, the right hand, the east side of Orange, there's a range of hills which have almost like dog teeth on, like kind of amazing structures, where certain villages which used to be called Côtes du Rhône are now called the village that they came from. They've been kind of elevated to crew superstar status. So you've got Côtes du Rhône, then you've got this level above it, which is called Côtes du Rhône Villages, which means it comes from the better villages in Côtes du Rhône. And there are 21 villages that are named, which can actually put their name on the label. 2 of those, which used to be Côtes du Rhône Villages, named villages, got made. They got signed up as head of the mafia. Back in, I think, the 60s, Gigondas was created. Gigondas was always, hey, don't drink Châteauneuf du Pape, drink Gigondas. It's way less expensive and it's almost as good. And in some cases, it's better. There are some quite extraordinary wines in Gigondas. Next to it, just south, is a region where there's a lot of granite and a lot of interesting soils. And That's where Vacqueyras comes from, which used to be called Côtes du Rhône Villages or Côtes du Rhône Vacqueyras. What I'm talking to you about now are 4 of the 21 named villages, which you may or may not have heard of, and this is getting pretty nerdy in wine terms, but you should have a look for when you get next time you go into a serious wine shop or even in a supermarket, because people tend to buy Côtes du Rhône because it's cheap. If they buy Côtes du Rhône Villages, it's probably because they care, and Côtes du Rhône Villages is going to be £2 or £3 more. A regular Côtes du Rhône Village can cost as little as £8 or £9. The moment you start naming the village on the label, you're probably looking at £11, £12, £13. But the best ones, the £13 or £14 ones, which are really good, and they get a bit more expensive than that, are way better than shit Chateauneuf du Pape, which will be 25 quid. Okay? I wouldn't say shit, but not brilliant. Okay, so let's have a look what we've got here. So this is the first one. This is called Eléments Luna. I'm using one glass here because I just I don't know, I just like it. This is from a producer which is based in Laudun, which is another village. Actually, it's based in Châteauneuf, which is next door. But Châteauneuf and Laudun, I don't know if you can see that. It says Laudun on the label. It's one of the most famous of the villages, and it's in what we call the right bank. It's actually down the left-hand side of the area that can be called Côtes du Rhône Village. And on the right bank, there is actually a very famous site, what Eddie Izzard would refer to as a series of small walls. And that used to be Julius Caesar's camp, and there was a permanent Roman settlement there. And that's in Laudun. They've been making wine since the Romans were there, and a lot longer than most regions of France. Then, when the Romans disappeared, winemaking was taken up very quickly again in the early 7th century. So this is a wine called Eléments Luna, Laudun, Côtes du Rhône Village. It's made from the regular varieties, which is Grenache, Syrah, Mourvèdre. It's got a lovely, slightly brackish purple colour. These wines are always so vivid when they're younger. This is from 2018, I believe. Yeah, 2018. It's got a bit of punch to it, as all the wines do down there in this hot region. 14.5% alcohol. Remember I talked about the pebbles on top of the clay? Because of what I know about wine, I can literally see it going on. It's like some savant mechanic seeing the pistons going up and down in an engine. I can feel what's this. I can almost close my eyes and see the vineyard. The pebbles, these hot pebbles, are so warm that at night the plant starts to wither, and the plant's looking for rehydration because all these pudding stones, which keep the vineyard so hot at night, wick out water from the plant. So the plant has to put its vines very deep into this cool, ice cold, wet, sodden clay and draw liquid up. And that's how these vines survive, by deep diving, welling for water. And this wine has this taste of roasted fruit and freshness at the same time. You can really taste what's going on. The smell, roasted plums, like a prune quality, but it doesn't smell like a tired old wine like pruny. It smells like fresh prunes that have just been cooked. That's a different thing. There's almost a hint of leather about it as well. Not in a bad way, not from a funky way, just that smell of, you know, when you go into a Louis Vuitton handbag shop or something, very fancy smell of cuir, of cured hide. It has refreshment about it despite that. And this is one of the reasons why I think Côtes du Rhône Village is so versatile. Such an authentic wine. Is because although it's got all the body, it's got the balls, it's got the alcohol, and by the way, there is nothing on earth that goes better than this with beef Wellington, and most of you out there know how to cook one of those. Oh, it's fantastic together. The mushroom pate and the rare beef and the croûte. Oh, roll on Christmas. This wine is really very special in the sense that you do have that roast and you have that refreshment as well. And that's kind of to epitomise not just Côtes du Rhône Village, but more specifically the wines from this area of Côtes du Rhône Village. So moving on, we're now going a bit further north towards the very northern tip in the Ardèchois, where Montélimar is. But actually, you're still in the mountains, so you don't go further than that. That's as far north as you kind of can go. And this is called Côtes du Rhône Village Visan. Look on there. And this is made by a superstar winemaking family. La Gloire de mon Père by Visan and I think it's Stéphanie Boyer, whose father is a bit of a ledge and owns Domaine de la Bastide. And this is a wine made by them as an expression of what they wanted to create. The label's lovely. If you like your Gérard Depardieu films and you're a bit of an arty film twat like I was in Manchester back in the late 80s, there was two films. There was Jean de Florette and Manon des Sources. And when I started watching those films, then La Gloire de mon Père, and these are all films by the most famous actor in France, Gérard Depardieu. Anyway, so La Gloire, which means the glory of my father, which is, I suppose, exactly what we're talking here. Visan is kind of respect where respect is due to old man, but we're going to make something a bit different. Watch. I don't know if that shows on camera, but it's a flip side darker than the wine we just had. Look at that. It's beautiful. It's like blood mixed with purple and black. Something hugely gothic and decadent about the colour. Ugh. Holy Mary, Mother of God. The smell. Oh, God, I love this wine. It smells like the wine's made using very little intervention. That means it's wild yeasts. It's probably made organic. This is a region which has cool winds coming down from the Alps and the Mistral every night. It's too hot for mildew or rot to exist, so you can be organic as much as you like. Nothing's going to hurt your vines. It's kind of a really healthy place. So you get a lot of wines in this style. But that wine, when I smell that, the kind of digestive juices start building up in my mouth. It smells of red bootlace licorice and dark chocolate. It also has a characteristic which I can only describe by knowing what creates it, and that is what I call a whole bunch character. Sometimes vines, I think the first wine in the Pinotage tasting, which I did only 2 or 3 episodes back with Fairview barrel aged, was made with whole bunches. And what you do is you put the bunch of grapes into the vat before you've even pressed it, and the grapes themselves start to build up in pressure because they've been filled with yeast. The yeast eats the sugar, makes carbon dioxide, and the grapes burst, and it leaves you with this rainfall of soft, gentle, strawberry, cherryish fruit. And when I smell that, that's all I can think of. And in the background, there's a slight smokiness, which maybe comes from the heat, from the scorch from the sunshine during the day before the air conditioning goes on and the Mistral comes down at night. Flipping delicious. That is such good wine. That is such good wine. I imagine I'll be surprised if you're not pushing 20 quid on that. But if I find out, and you'll see it in the thing below when I find out how much this costs, if it is indeed available in this country. If that's 15 quid, that's the bargain of the century. Okay, so what's special about that wine? As far as I know, because I was referring to the dark colour, 100% Syrah. Now that's what they do up north in the Rhône. So you've got the Southern Rhône, you've got the ridge of hills, the Dontai, and then you've got Montélimar, and then you've got the Northern Rhône, which is a very steep hilled area, where almost every red wine is made 100% Syrah. Wow, I'm enjoying myself way too much. Extraordinary wine, still very young. Oaks are still a bit forward. I think the wine will simulate the wood, will soften into the wine. It will taste more like dried mushroom, slightly less like a carpenter's bin round. But it's not heavy oak. I don't want to tell you that it's like spicy oak, but it's just enough. At this stage, if you're a sucker for a bottle of really good Rioja, this is half the price of a Rioja of the same taste. Very, very, very impressed. Fantastic. Moving on. So we've got Orange, we've got Chateauneuf du Pape, the Côtes du Rhône area. We've been down here to Laudun. We've been up here to Visan. Now we're going down onto the high ridge that goes up towards the Alps. The first one we're going to do is a wine called Sablé. The name kind of conjures up a thing. Sablé, sable in French is sand, and there are sandy soils here, and that allows the wine to dry. But you're in a more bright, what they call Côte Blonde soil. The soils are whiter, less clay based, probably limestone and sand with pebbles. Much paler in colour this, because it's not made from 100% Syrah. Like the other, it's much more Grenache dominant. I'm not sure you're even allowed to make. It can't be, can it? I don't think it had 100% Syrah in Côtes du Rhône Villages. Anyway, I need to do more research, but the wine's certainly got much more colour and much more Syrah character on the nose. Anyway. Again, there's a real kind of organicness about it. This one's a little funky. Funky in the way of, I've just had a lovely horse ride. Woo, what do you smell of? I smell of saddles. There's this kind of a fresh smell of the stable about it. I'm not talking shit. I'm talking something nicer than that, but still farmyardy nonetheless. It has a very dusty, bright nose. Has a high acid. I don't mean that in a bad way. It's got a real refreshing acid, drawn back by quite grippy tannins. What we call pumice tannins. It's almost like pumice stone or putting blotting paper in your mouth. Very drying. You've got all this fruit, all this alcohol, all this freshness, and suddenly it finishes nice and dry for another slice of saucisson, another scoop of pate. It's perfect with foods. Bring me on to the last one. Go on, getting pissed. Séguret. La Mondine. Séguret is held as one of the great villages, along with Sablé and maybe a couple of others. Very much one of the appellations that's tipped to be upgraded maybe one day. This won a gold medal in France. Might be quite nice. So this is a Syrah Grenache blend. This is also from the similar part of Côtes du Rhône from where Sablé came from. But Séguret, it really is DNA similar to Vacqueyras and Gigondas. And as a result, costs a little bit more usually than some of the others in the area. But this one is truly match. La Mondine, Domaine La Mondine is, which means the almond trees, I'm guessing, is a wine that I've come across from time to time, only in really nice restaurants. But Jean-Pierre Verdeau, who makes this wine, has consistently produced astonishing wines over the last 10 years that I've known him. There's something more of the Burgundy about this. This wine, rich, roasted fruits. This one, a deep dive into sort of juicy, dark fruits. This one, drier, more Rhône-like in Southern Rhône terms, I suppose, more as what you expect. But this wine here, it has a harmony and a fragrance to it, which makes you sit and listen. I've got some saucisson in the fridge. I literally want to go and get some saucisson sliced up right now. The moment I turn this camera off, you know what I'm going to do. Okay. Works so hard sometimes. Delicious. Pumicey tannins. It feels like Vacqueyras in the mouth. Compared to the others, the wine has an elegance, a subtlety, a quietly spoken quality about it, but at the same time has this bullet train of momentum. There's some real alcohol and weight there. What a spectacular wine. So these wines are Côtes du Rhônes. Would you believe that? Côtes du Rhônes. And you're ignoring them. You walk past them every day in every supermarket, blah, blah. You go past, well, Côtes du Rhône, that's cheaper than Côtes du Rhône Village. I'll buy the... No. Have a look for these wines. Go into local independents. That's where this rare variety of super bargain in France kind of hides in the shadows. And really, all I can say is thank you very much, Côtes du Rhône Village, for letting me do the podcast with Matt, because I learned so much. Made a few quid. And this is my payback to you and all the growers out there in probably the most underrated big red wine region of France. So there you go. Next week, we're going to help South Africa sell a few bottles, because South Africa needs our help, ladies and gentlemen. They need our help. So the next one's going to be a massive tasting of the most exquisite Cabernet Sauvignons, which is one of South Africa's great, great, great tricks. And then I'm going to do Bordeaux blends as well. Then the week after that, it's going to get all Tyrol and Austrian. See you soon. Cheers.